Everyone, and welcome to our reflection on Wednesday, the 17th of March. This morning we're looking at the Gospel of John, chapter 10, and the story of the Good Shepherd. Let me just read that for you briefly. It starts at verse 11. I am the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So, when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he's a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheepfold. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. The Jews who heard these words were again divided. Many of them said, "He is demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him?" But others said, "These are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?" Thanks be to God for his word. Well, it's a very familiar passage, the story of the Good Shepherd, and it's Jesus, obviously, that is claiming to be this Good Shepherd. And so we get lost sometimes because it is so familiar. We don't see what's in there. So I'm just going to go through it and pick out a few things that we see here about the Good Shepherd, about Jesus. The first thing he says is he lays down his life for the sheep. So keeping with that sort of shepherd and sheep image for a moment, we're talking about a shepherd who would be attacked by a wolf, perhaps, in order to protect the sheep. He lays down his life for the sheep. I remember hearing some time ago about the kind of sheep pens that were around at that time, a walled enclosure with a gap in the wall for the sheep to go in, on one side of the wall for the sheep to go in, but no gate. And so Jesus, in other passages, calls himself the gate for the sheep to come in and go out. So here's the Good Shepherd who, at night time, will lay across that gap in the wall. He will be the gate to prevent the sheep from straying out and getting lost, and prevent the wolves or thieves from coming in to attack the sheep. So that's the first thing we know about Jesus. He's willing to lay down his life for his sheep. And the sheep, obviously, in this passage are people, his flock, the people he loves. And he compares himself to somebody who's a hired hand. So he's saying, these are my sheep. We are kind of one here. We are a family. These are my sheep. But the hired hand, he doesn't have that same personal care that he has for his sheep. The hired hand, he's not the shepherd. He's just paid to do a job. And if you're just paid to do a job, you might do it well, or you might not do it very well at all. But the hired hand doesn't own the sheep. So if he sees the wolf coming, he's not going to give up his life for the sheep, is he? He's going to run away, which is what he says in this passage. He runs away because he's not got that personal care, that personal affinity with the sheep. It doesn't bother him. He's just in it for the pay at the end of the day. And presumably he can get another job. So he runs away. and the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. He doesn't care about the sheep. But Jesus cares about his people. Jesus cares for you and for me. He cares for each and every one of us. He knows us by name. He says, I'm a good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. He has this personal relationship with us, and we have this personal relationship with him. And that's why it's so difficult for other people to understand when a Christian is so committed, because they don't have that personal relationship with Jesus. But Jesus has that personal relationship with each one of us. And if we don't have that personal relationship with him, then we are not his sheep. And in fact, that relationship goes very deep, because he says, just as the Father knows me, I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. So that intimacy of relationship he's saying is the same kind of relationship that he has with his own Father in heaven. It's that oneness, that complete oneness, that unity of heart and mind. And then he says, I have other sheep that are not of this sheepfold. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. So although he cares for his flock that he has now, for the ones that are in the sheep pen, he's aware that there are other sheep that are out there, other sheep on the mountains that are vulnerable, that are not his, but are still open to all sorts of attack or whatever, the elements. And so he says that, there are others, and I must go and bring them in too. I must go and find them and bring them in, so that we can have just one flock and one shepherd. So even though he's got this personal relationship with the sheep in the fold, with his own flock, he says that I want others to join us. I want to bring others in, because there are others who need my personal care. And then he talks about his own relationship with his Father. And he says his Father loves him because he lays down his life only to take it up again. And of course, he's making reference to that time which is coming up for us in this church season, where Jesus will go to the cross, where he will literally give up his life and die for his people. So we come away now from that kind of image of the sheep and the shepherd, and we see Jesus, the man, the human being, dying on a cross in agony for a crime he didn't commit. And he dies there for you and for me. He dies there to protect us, just in the same way that the shepherd protected the sheep. He dies there. He'd rather give up his life than any of us lose our lives. He died there to make us one with him, to bring us into that personal relationship, to bring us back to God the Father, to make us that one unit, one with him and one with the Father. He died there, gave up his life, in a sense, in place of us. He wasn't prepared to lose not one. And the only way to ensure that we might be saved was to die in our place. I had a conversation with somebody this week, and I had to say, that no one is perfect. When we sit in church on a Sunday, when I get up to give a sermon or do something online like this, I do it as a flawed human being. Yes, I do it as a Christian who's been saved by the grace of God, but I'm a flawed human being. I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. And if we waited for people to be perfect before we let them do stuff in the church, for example, we'd be waiting a very long time, because none of us, who can say that we are totally honest all the time? Who can say that we are without sin, without fault, that we don't trip up sometimes, that we don't make mistakes? We're not perfect. And so Jesus, the one who was perfect, knows that in order to perfect us, he has to go to the cross and die. And he's willing to do that. And he does it of his own accord. He isn't coerced into it, he isn't badgered into it. He's not being manipulated by his Father. He's taken stock, he's thought about it, he's seen what it means. He knows what would happen if he didn't, and he knows the result if he does. And so, of his own accord, of his own authority, he lays his life down. And people looking on, some of them said he's demon possessed and he's raving mad, because they couldn't see what he was doing. He couldn't see why he might need to go to the cross, because they were too caught up in their own self-righteousness. They didn't think they needed saving. They didn't think they needed help of any kind. They were all right on their own. They could manage, thank you very much. They don't need a prop. But Jesus knew that they did, and he did it anyway. Whether they thought they needed him or not, or whether they thought they needed it or not, he still did it for them. He still did it for us, even when we were in our sin and we had no thought of needing saving, because we thought we were okay. Jesus still went to the cross for us anyway. But there's that little bit to the end of that verse, because it says that they thought he was demon possessed and raving mad, and so they said, why listen to him? Isn't that the case? When you don't understand what somebody's doing, you just walk away, you just turn your back on them. You're not interested in finding out the real truth. You're not interested in listening to somebody, to hearing their side of the story, because you're already convinced of your own righteousness, or you're already convinced that you know what's what. And so you walk away and you don't listen to someone. But there were others who said, these are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. I mean, who's going to give up their life for someone else or other people because they're demon possessed? That's not the work of a demon, is it? The work of a demon is to take someone's life, but the work of a demon is not to surrender their life. The demon, the enemy, the evil, is just to take someone else's life. That's evil. But to give up your life, to sacrifice for the people that you love, that's the work of the Holy Spirit. And that's what I see many people doing in the church and outside of the church, sacrificing their lives for the sake of another, giving up their freedoms to care for someone, giving up their money to provide for someone, going without to give your child a meal, sacrificing, big or small, for the sake of another. That is love laid down. That is the work of the Good Shepherd. They said, these are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? And sometimes we're blind because we will not see. We're so convinced of our own righteousness that we won't see, we won't listen. So this week we're thinking about Jesus, the Good Shepherd, and how can we be like him in our lives? How are we looking out for the well-being of others? How far are we prepared to go for the sake of someone else? What is it that we can give this week that will benefit someone else? It might be something very small. It might be an hour of our time. And I know there are many people out there doing just that this week who are giving and giving and giving. But I also know that there are others who take, who criticize those who are giving, and there are others who are just hiding. Let's be like the Good Shepherd. Let's not count the cost, but let's have a sense of sacrifice about us. Let's have a sense of doing good for the sake of others and not counting the cost, but giving. And giving is not the same as allowing someone to take something. Giving is to be freely given, without resentment, without counting the cost. It is giving in order to bless someone. It's not giving up. It's not walking away. It's being positive about what we can do to lift someone else up. Thanks for listening. Bye for now, and I'll speak to you again soon. God bless.